So welcome everyone. It's nice to see all these countries in the chat box. Welcome from Athens, Greece. I see we have participants from our neighbor in the Mediterranean, Montenegro, Italy, but also faraway countries like South Africa, Philippines, Portugal from the Mediterranean, Belarus, the United States. Nice to have you all here. Thank you for joining us also in this live session. My name is Iro Alampei, and together with my colleague Vicky Malotivi and Olga, will be facilitating this session. So this is the first live session of the Asterousia University, Summer University, which is for the second time taking place in a hybrid format. It combined the live session that took place in October in the Asterousia Biosphere Reserve of Crete. And now we are in the first week of this online session. Let me just share my screen in order to explain to you what is the overall structure for today. So we will have the opportunity to discuss with the experts every week. This week we have with us Professor Skoulos, who is the scientific coordinator of the entire course, and Mr. Jonathan Baker from the UNESCO Venice office. Actually, it's the regional bureau for science in Europe that is based in Venice. He informed us that he will be a little bit late. So we thought that after a small introduction, we will, from the experts, we will devote some time to the experts responding to your questions that were posed to them during reading and watching the videos that you have been seeing in the platform so far. So we will devote around 30 minutes in this interaction. Of course, you are welcome to keep asking questions. And then we will devote another 30 minutes to some breakout rooms where we will, in small groups, we will be discussing around a question regarding a nomination of a site to become a biosphere reserve. And we will be closing with some clarifications, announcements, and a mini evaluation of this session. So some housekeeping notes. As you already have seen, this session is being recorded in order to be made available to those participants whom, for whatever reason, are not able to join us. Of course, if you don't want to be recorded, you can always keep your camera off, but it's always better to see your faces while we are interacting. So we advise that, we suggest that you keep your camera on for a better interaction and communication with you. However, please keep your microphones off until after the breakout session, where you will be called to give us some feedback. We will leave the chat box open for any comments you may have. And of course, we also have already shared with you the Slido, where we keep all the questions to the experts. It is advised that you keep all distractions switched off, so please switch off or remove your phone and keep all distractions such as email, social media accounts off during the session, but you're welcome to have your coffee or a snack, and also you're welcome to keep notes. However, as I said, this session will be uploaded in the course platform later this afternoon as soon as we finish the recording. So a small introduction about this week's experts. Professor Skoulos, as you have already probably read in the course platforms, is a professor emeritus of environmental chemistry in the University of Athens and director of the UNESCO Chair on Management and Education for Sustainable Development in the Mediterranean. He is the chair of the Mediterranean Information Office, which is the largest federation of NGOs in the Mediterranean, environmental and sustainable development NGOs. And he's also the coordinator of MEDIS. MEDIS is a network of educators from the Mediterranean dealing with education for sustainable development. Professor Skoulos has worked for more than 40 years in environmental education that later evolved to become education for sustainable development. He was the scientific coordinator of all previous summer universities. Actually, this is the 7th one. We will be having with us also Mr. Jonathan Baker. He is working in the regional, he's a regional science advisor and head of the science unit at the UNESCO Regional Bureau for Science and Culture in Europe, that is based in Venice. He has been working for 20 years with UNESCO and its Man and the Biosphere program, both at the global level and regionally in various sites around the world, Latin America and the Caribbean, and now in Europe. Any questions you have for them, please share them in Slido or in the chat. Now I will stop share because apart from talking about us and the experts we will have with us, and we will give them the floor in a while, we have prepared some polls in order to get a little, for you to get an idea about your co-learners. Where do they come from and what is their profession? So we have the first question asking you what describes best your professional profile. So are you a formal?
Hello. Hi, my name is Cynthia. I come from Lebanon. I'm a member of HEAD, the Human Environmental for Development. It is an association that takes care, an NGO that takes care of the beaches and the welfare of the animals in the sea.
Hello,
this
Cynthia.
Is what we do. We collect plastic.
Hi, Cynthia.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you. It's nice to have you. It's nice to be part of this program, and hopefully it would be a good one.
Thank you.
What do I tell you?
People keeps filling the poll.
Mm-hmm. Around half of you have already voted. Please vote if you what role describes you best. You feel like you're a formal or non-formal educator. You work in the tertiary sector in academia. You are a researcher or scientist, or you are a manager or staff, other staff in Biosphere Reserve or other designated area. Around 60% of you have already indicated your profession. Maybe we can end the poll. Vicky, you want to comment on the results?
Actually, this time we were expecting lesser educators, but we are happy to see that they keep coming and committing, particularly when it comes to ESD in BRs and designated areas. We still have some academia, some university staff with us, and of course, staff from the BRs and the designated areas. Though we do have from the registrations more researchers and young scientists, it seems that they couldn't make it today with us. It's only 3 out of 26. We hope to see them in the next live meeting. Okay.
Yes, and maybe we can talk a little bit about your expectations. While registering. So in your application, you filled in some information about you and what you expect from such a course. Several of you, as Vicky said, are managers. We were very happy this time to have a big part of this community who are actually working in biosphere reserves and in other protected areas and other sites. So many of you are practitioners, however, and wish to get more in-depth training on environmental management, and asked for to be updated with best practices that can be replicated in your sites. There is a specific fraction of our community who are researchers and PhD students or doing some scientific work on site. So they thought that this course would help them to keep up to date with what is happening in the MAN program. To exchange, you asked, of course, to exchange ideas with BR managers and to network with people for future collaborations and opportunities. Some of you come from specific sites, like marine and coastal sites, and you asked for specific tips or things that could help you in managing such sites. Except for marine and coastal sites, we have 2 or 3 people coming from wetland or river related sites. Yes, some of you asked to learn new approaches and new practical skills that can be replicated in your sites and in your profession, how to design programs to engage others. And these others may be for some of you students, for others are local communities or other dedicated audiences, such as young people or women or even businessmen in your sites. Maybe we can...
Shall I launch the second question,
yes,
Mira?
we have one more question for you. So this week we have been already discussing about the general framework around sustainable development and the MAB program. And in order to help our experts see how much you have progressed, our question to you is how much you have progressed in reading and viewing the videos and the material that is uploaded in week 1. Not at all, a little bit, or done with? Be frank. We see 3/3 of you have already replied to this question.
It seems that we need some time. Still, we need some time to complete the week, the first week. In any case, it's the very first one. And we do know that many of you registered the very last minute. Of course, you're welcome. And we hope that you have all the time to complete this very first week.
So in order for you to have an idea about where we are now, most of you, we see around 60% of you have progressed only a little. There is a small fraction that have done most of it, and another small fraction that is done with content. So let's just see what was the content of this week in only one slide. We discussed about the general framework of the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. Then we had some presentations around the MAB program in general, and another presentation how the MAB and the BRs are being operating in the context of the pandemic, how they respond to that. There was a presentation about the European biodiversity strategy, a general presentation from Professor Skoulos on the general principles of management, environmental management. And we discussed also the nomination factors contributed to successful application. Last but not least, we had the speaker from Asterousia who explained to us the process of nomination of Asterousia. This happened 2 years ago. Asterousia has already joined the MAB-BR network since last year. So it's a new yet BR. And without further ado, I think Professor Skoulos, we are done with this introduction to week one, and you are welcome to give us our introductory comments.
Thank you, Iro, and welcome to everybody. I'm really very pleased to have you all, and we'll try to be as interactive as possible, although we know the restrictions and the problems through the online discussions. But on the other hand, this gives us the opportunity to meet also with people who are far away, and it is most likely that without these means we couldn't make it in a physical meeting. First of all, I would like to say that it doesn't matter that you progressed little, the majority in the first week, but please get into the entire set of the lectures. I believe that the quality of the preparation is adequate for you to be interested and learn and share. I want to tell you that although we are celebrated 50 years of the MAB program, there was and still is a big evolution in the usefulness, I mean, in its operation and its ambitions. And it is indicative that in the last few years, we have a rapidly increasing number of applications of sites to become manage the biosphere reserves. This is because of two main reasons. One is the further understanding of the society and of managers also, that sustainable development is the magic notion towards which we have to direct our management, but also through which we approach bigger numbers of interested people, audiences. And this is linked, therefore, with the development of sustainability and sustainable development. So this was not there at the very beginning. And this is also why we started with the term reserve. And I had also one of the questions from you, if we still keep this term. We keep it for historical reasons. We don't mean that biosphere reserves are only for reserve and conservation. The key, actually, driver today is sustainable development and the sustainable development goals. And this is actually the reason why we have this increasing interest, because the biosphere reserves are areas where we can experiment easier about the application, the implementation of sustainable development in a real place, on the ground. And this is something that still, even within the MAB family, is not 100% understood. And this is because, again, of historical reasons. There are biosphere reserves that have been established many years ago. They are much closer to national parks and fully protected areas with no dimensions of development, sustainable development in their structure. So this, one of the essential messages of this university is actually how we can make the sustainable development visible and real in our biosphere reserves. It is also interesting that all other designated areas, including the ones in Europe, the Natura 2000 sites, including specially protected areas under UNEP, for example, or Ramsar sites, have started or very fast growing the same system or adopting the same philosophy. And even the structure of differentiated intensity of management, with a core, with the buffer zone and the periphery zone, the transition zone. So the essence of this workshop and this university is to make clear to all of you this transition towards making a modern approach to protection. A modern approach to protection of biodiversity without threatening at the same time neither the concept nor the actual situation in the different biosphere reserves. So this is what I wanted to say. I'm sure that soon also Jonathan will join. But as Iro already said, you can also pose questions during this session. I have already in front of me more than some 17, 18 questions. And I propose that I may start by replying to some of these, commenting rather. And we see if this actually stimulates a further discussion. And I will make sure that you have the time also for the breakout groups. I start by asking if there is any of you who has any overall question about the university, the structure, or whatever. If you do have, you may actually request for the floor and put your question or comments now or later. Okay, so I have the questions are quite different and are addressed either to me or to Jonathan, but I will get through all of them. Some of the questions have to do with structural things. Other are more general. I start with some of the more general. For example, there is a question about how best we can preserve biodiversity in the light of human competition to deplete natural resources. Well, what we have here is a combination of, this is why we have the differentiated intensity of management. We realize that there are areas where we need to be very strict, and these are the cores. And we continue to have this kind of approach. We need to make sure that there are places where the human intervention should be minimal or absent altogether. And this is why we have all over the world the understanding of the expansion of the protected areas. In Europe, we have the ambition of 30% of the continent to be somehow to be protected, in inverted commas, 10% of which should be absolute protection. At the same time, we understand that there are so many needs, including green needs. For example, we need to have decarbonization. That means that we need space for wind mills, for producing renewable energies from photovoltaics, from wind, from geothermal. So this means that we can we have to find balanced and wise approaches. If you want to call them compromised approaches, I even accept that. So that means that the absolute protection cannot be, it should be expanded, but it cannot be in all, let's say, 30% of the continent. So we need to see ways in which we can use modern technology, state-of-the-art technology, and century-old traditions in a balance, because we have also, I ask you to visit the Hydria project we have, which is a virtual museum for water, where we promote and explain the century-old practices on water, not because of nostalgia, but because we think that low energy, old, wise practices need to be revisited and used in parallel. And the other thing is that we need to approach biodiversity not only as communities, not only through rules enshrined in legislation, but also as persons. And again, the biosphere reserves help in shaping the mindset and actually the behavior of individuals as well, because this is also important, and is very important also for the people who live within or around the biosphere reserves, where we need to make them allies. In the past, and in many cases, they are hostile to the protection because of the way this was imposed on them, and they don't see the benefit. So they need to find their way and find and see how they can also profit, inverted commas, from that. And the profit is both moral and economic. And by this, I answer also one of the last questions. I mean, in Asterousia, we have managed to bring in the membership really all major stakeholders: fishermen, farmers, tourist operators, together with the experts from universities, but together with all levels of the authorities. The local authorities, there are 5 municipalities. The mayors of these 5 municipalities participate in a rotation system, not all the 3 of them, and rotate. And the same is with the representatives of periphery, of the Natura sites that are part of the biosphere reserves, and so on and so forth. Now, another question is how we can strengthen the focal points or the national MAB committees. What Iro didn't mention is that I'm the chairman of the Greek MAB committee for many years. And I can tell you that in Greece, at least, the MAB committee is rather weak in the sense that we are not financed, not funded by the government. And we are all volunteers. And I say that because I'm also the chairman of the Mediterranean Information Office, which has included in its annual program the expansion of the idea of the man and the biosphere network around the Mediterranean, I have the support of Iro, Vicky, Vasilis, Olga, who also support the Greek map committee. So one of the requests is to have from the government in each country some support for a secretariat and for basic functions. We have managed here. In other countries, they cannot. There are countries like Germany, for example, where the map committee has, I don't know, 20 members of staff paid by the government, something like that. So you can see that there is a very different scenario in the different countries. But what is important is that in all countries, we have managed to keep the link between Paris, the government, and the biosphere reserves. And in Greece, for example, in the coming years, we expect to have a big expansion because I have already the declared interest by more than 6 areas preparing to become biosphere reserves. Now, on the questions about the engagement, this is also linked with engagement. Engagement of volunteers can be done, particularly also we tried in Greece, and we have with us few persons from youth, what was youth and still you are, and they are volunteers, and they have played an important role within the country, but also representing us in various fora. At the level of the central level, I'm not aware of any other scheme except from the Youth Forum, which actually is inspiring young people to be volunteers linked with the biosphere reserves. Well, there is a question, rather theoretical, how we can address things and research within MAB network under the pandemic conditions. Well, this is very general. We realize the difficulties. I think it is common the way in which also universities and research centers operate in a very hybrid way. There are still people in the field, but with many difficulties. I have another question about publications, about the monitoring of SDGs. I leave it for Jonathan. I think that there is no monitor in the sense that this question is there. I mean, it is a voluntary process for biosphere reserves to communicate to the Secretariat their interest and initiatives there. The overall communication, there are many questions about communication and exchange. Most of the biosphere reserves have some communication schemes. And the Secretariat has also various tools for communication, and but I'm not aware of a single, let's say, toolbox of biosphere reserves, where the experiences of the good practices and experiences of all biosphere reserves are collected and communicated. There have been several attempts at regional, for example, in Euromap, but not in the sense that some of the questions indicate. I think this is an excellent idea, and we may bring it again. I know that is an issue of resources behind.
Actually, also, if I can
Yes,
jump
please.
into Professor Skoulos, in week 2 of this e-course, we will be talking about communication and branding strategies.
Yes.
And there is a specific tool that will be presented by the lecturers of week 2 that will help managers of biosphere reserves showing best practices in communication. We will discuss this more in week 2. I also see a lot of questions that are more directed to Mr. Baker, to Jonathan. I don't know if you want to go on, or maybe we could, if you have identified some questions that are more general for you, or you prefer maybe to go on to the breakout sessions where participants will be asked to, as you said, there is a plethora of sites that are interested right now in Greece and all around the world to become biosphere reserves. And already this week in your talk, you already mentioned some success factors, starting from the example of Asterousia. But maybe we can give to participants the opportunity to interact around this question, and then we come back and hopefully we will have some time for Jonathan to respond to some more specific questions for this. I don't know if you agree.
Yes, you may go to the next session. The only thing I wanted to say is that there is one or two specific questions about the membership criteria. I think I answered. We included them all, but on coexistence in the same place of World Heritage sites or geoparks in the same area. It is a delicate issue, but the way we have approached it is that the same is with already existing protected areas within the Biosphere Reserve. We have 4 Natura sites. Each one, we have archaeological sites and the rest. Each one of them keeps its own mandate, follows the mandate and the legislation that governs its role. And the steering committee, the management committee, has exactly this role. They participate in the management committee. They use the resources allocated for the particular sub area, and all together share their activities. So we know and we plan. We are at the beginning in Asterousia. At the moment, everything is rosy still. I expect that at a given moment, there will be eventual difficulties, but the starting point is that we don't inhibit the function of the subunits, but we try actually to combine and secure the coherence of all these subunits. So I stop here, and I will come back after the work in groups.
Okay, Professor, it sounds challenging to combine this operation of various sites in the same territory. I'm sure that the participants may share a few things about that. Let me just give you the question that we will be working on. In our groups. So you can see my screen. We will, for the next few minutes, we will split in groups of 5 people. This will be around 10 groups. We are around 50 people, so there will be around 10 groups. You will have 10 minutes in your groups. Devote some time to introduce yourselves, better to assign a rapporteur for the group, and explain in a few words in your own context and within your own experience. Suppose you are about to nominate an area to become a Biosphere Reserve, or you have yourself the experience of such a nomination. What are some key factors for this nomination to be successful? The key success factors, this is the main question. You will have 1 or 2 minutes each, and maybe rapporteurs will be asked to report back in plenary within 1 minute the basic factors. So if this is clear, you will be discussing about the key factors for a successful nomination of a Biosphere Reserve site, and you will have around 10 minutes. I will stop share, and I will ask Olga to split us in groups. This might take 1 minute.
I think Jonathan Baker just entered our discussion. Most probably he will go into a discussion room directly. Yes, and come back.
Welcome, Jonathan.
Thank you. I see I'm a little late. Minor mix-up, but I had to. Unfortunately, I had an obligation I had to deal with before this. Anyways, I'm happy to be here. How is everybody doing? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. And actually, we changed a little bit the sequence, so you have the time to respond also to several of the questions.
All right, great.
After the, after the group.
After the group.
Okay, great. All right, so they're in groups now, and then they'll, okay, fantastic. So should I go to the group? I'm invited to go to group 5, or do I need to, or should I just wait till everybody comes back?
You can join the group, Jonathan, if you wish.
Being recorded.
So we see people are starting to get back. We hope that you had the chance to talk a little bit about these nomination factors and from your countries and based on your experience. I'm not sure where Professor Skoulos is, but we have already some participants who wish to take the floor and maybe share with us some feedback on their conversation. So maybe Angela, you want to start? Angela Clausen.
Hello, good afternoon. So just to I mean, we didn't, so my name is Angela, first of all. I am French, but I live in Greece. I'm not a Biosphere Reserve manager. I work actually with MIO on sustainable development in the Mediterranean region, but well, I have worked a bit on biodiversity and natural areas protection. So I was in a group with two ladies. Unfortunately, only one lady was available to speak. It was Austin from South Africa. She lives in the Vembe Biosphere Reserve. That is the largest. I mean, we exchange a little bit. It's the largest biosphere reserve in South Africa. However, the internet connection was very bad, so we couldn't exchange a lot. So she lives in the biggest Southern African biosphere reserve, and which includes a part of the Kruger Park, which is very well known for, of course, biodiversity. And it has 1.5 million inhabitants, out of which many people, 97%, live in are rural populations. So in terms of success factors, we weren't quite sure, but I would say that my experience of natural areas and in terms of criteria, how to select would be the biodiversity that is present, the intactness of the biodiversity, so the values, the ecosystem values, and also the participation of the population in the management and the interest of the local population in managing participating in the management of the biosphere reserves. Yes, and another critical success factor living in Greece would be the compatibility of the activities that are taking place in the biosphere reserves in terms of with the conservation. So if, for example, the activities are too damaging to the ecosystem, that could be a risk factor for the biosphere reserve. I'm thinking of, for example, renewable energy development in several places in Greece that are quite impactful, and I don't think it's always easy to combine this type of development with conservation. So maybe this is also something that Professor Skoulos and Mr. Baker could address in terms of, as a discussion topic. Thank you.
You are muted, Professor.
Thank you, Angela. However, I would like to have very brief answers, because otherwise we don't have the time. So try to be as brief as possible. And at the same time, you may refer to the previous speakers and say, in addition to what it was said, let's add or emphasize one or two. Don't repeat necessarily same things. So who wants to follow? Melania.
Okay, hi, I'm Melania. I'm Italian from an environmental association. And I wanted to expand something that Angela already said. Of course, ecological value is very important to identify and a biosphere reserve. And also we have to consider the will of the population to participate and to give value to their territory. But of course, it's also very important to identify some of the attractions that we could use to improve and preservation of the area, and also to identify people that will be included in all the area we have to preserve in order to create a biosphere reserve. Only to add these things.
Thank you, Melania. Thank you a lot. Who is next? Who will report from another group? Glenda?
Yes, good evening. I am Glenda from Palawan, Philippines. In our group, there are 4 of us, but only 3 of us were able to speak. So we have Lina from Austria, Elizabeth from Greece, and me. We have identified 3 factors connected to the last speaker is the strong local support for the candidate BR and a well worked up concept for the nomination. And of course, an updated social and ecological profiling for the candidate PR. That would be all. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Celine Mcdonald is next.
Yes, hi everybody. Celine Mcdonald from South Africa here. I'm with Cape Winelands Biosphere Reserve, and we were 5 in our group, four ladies and my colleague who's also part of Cape Winelands Biosphere Reserve. So Antonia Theodosiou, please forgive my butchering of the names, Aya Al-Ansari and Biljana Rimseska and Bevan Thomas. And what we spoke about was for a biosphere reserve to be successfully registered and nominated, one word that came up was uniqueness, and also the cultural and natural heritage, a lot of focus on tradition and also endemic species. So the area needs to have something very unique and special to offer, and also different opportunities. Preservation, what? Okay, sorry. Yeah, that's my feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Celine. Thank you very much.
And the last thing which yes. I'll just add is a lot of paperwork and persistence.
It's true. Thank you. I'll come back to that. Che.
Yes. Good evening. I'm Che from Palawan. Yes. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening. Good afternoon. I'm Che from Palawan, Philippines. I'm together with Luis Gaspar, Madronica Prestante, and another one who was unable to join because of internet connectivity. So from our group, we agreed to the other participants that they mentioned earlier. So environmental characteristics is important, as well as the involvement from the stakeholders, since once the area will be designated as a biosphere reserve, that would have a great impact on the lives of the people, since definitely there will be no new rules to be implemented in the area. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, I see Paul Robertson.
Yeah, good morning from the west coast of North America, where the sun has not broken yet. But I was lucky to be joined by 3 folks from South Africa, Nicholas, Nikoya, and Makona, and then another woman from Navina from Montenegro. And what we spoke about was biodiversity, endangered species, but also like collaboration with community members was key. And the last word, governance, getting the governance right. So those were our contributions. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Actually, you are the first who stressed actually the word governance, and we'll come back to that. Pedro is the next one.
Hello, thank you. I have a problem with my internet, but now I think it's okay. We are a group of 5, most of them, I think, girls, and very democratic. They voted to be me that will speak for the group. Well, I'm Pedro. I live in Azores, Portugal, in a biosphere reserve of the island of Graciosa. In Azores, we have 4 biosphere reserves. And what we just in our talk, we understood that the key factor was the involvement, the importance of involving the community. I talk about the problem in Azores that the biosphere reserve was decided by the government, and after more than 10 years, we still have the problem of calling the people to understand the importance of the living in a biosphere reserve. Another point is because the government decided and create these 4 biosphere reserves, but the other problem is the commitment that the politicians must have with the biosphere reserve, because as I told you, if the government decides to create by himself to create a biosphere reserve, after 4 years the government change, and the new ones must not be so interested in the project. So it must be when there is a proposal to create a biosphere reserve, must be a commitment with the country, the proposals, the people who make the proposal, at least for 10 or more years. If not, as we saw in Azores, very quickly the interest and the investment in the biosphere reserve start to be a little shorter. So that's all, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pedro, and for the very down-to-earth actually observations. I see that Mariam is asking for the floor. I think she was in a group, but she didn't have the time to intervene. Is that right? You are muted, Mariam.
Yes, you understand? You listen to me now?
Yes.
It's clear? So
yes.
sorry, I have just a technical problem.
Okay.
So I am Mariam Houidi from Tunisia. I am Inspector of Justice in the Ministry of Justice in Tunisia. I study law, but I am interested in the subject of environment and how really I can speak French more than English, but I will slowly though. So especially in recent years, really we constate that the environment is in general have become dangerous. So everybody of us should think about how protect the environment and the area in general, because it's I think that it's a vital subject that we will be and should be conscient, especially for example, we can protect environment by engaging in awareness campaigns, or for example, for reasoning children by the importance of area, and try to find a solution, especially especially for protect the area.
Thank you.
So Sorry,
It's okay. It's okay.
My English, it's very bad. Sorry.
No, it's very good. Thank you very much. Thank you for your contribution. So I think we have concluded. Irini, you are okay? Yes, please.
So in our group, we were 5 people and we discussed for a biosphere reserve to be successful. We talked about sustainability and sustainable development, and also that local communities play an important role in the biosphere reserves and the enhancement of local quality life. As well as in initiatives in environmental protection, cultural heritage protection, and yes, basically these were the topics that we discussed.
Thank you, Irini. Thank you very much. I saw another hand, but it disappeared.
I think it disappeared. Maybe I can.
Disappeared.
Maybe my small contribution further to all the factors that have been mentioned so far is studying a nomination of other BRs. So getting familiarized with the process and seeing how others did it. There are good examples out there. And maybe on this participation factor that has been mentioned by many of you, to target inclusively specific target groups from the community, for example, businessmen, educators, producers, in a structured way.
Okay, let me, I mean, all what it was said is important, no doubt. 3 small comments. The issue of governance that was raised, and also directly and indirectly raised also by Pedro, is important. And for UNESCO, for the MAP Secretariat, this is an important factor for nomination. In Greece, we have submitted the candidacy of Samothraki, which is, I think, a unique place of biodiversity, of cultural heritage, of beauty, of everything. And the willingness of people was there. But there was no guarantee for an effective management and resources for this management. So one of the important elements for successful application is exactly this, to secure the governance, the sustainability of the governance, and the necessary resources. So this is a very important component to add to all what has been explained quite nicely by all of you. I think there is a general consensus on that. So and one more thing on what Angela said. Biosphere reserves are not protected areas per se. They include protected areas. So it is important that in the parts that are the cores or the protected parts, we have strict protection. Then we can discuss about, within the carrying capacity of the system, about other things, including eventually wind turbines or whatever. And definitely what we want is not just protection in inverted commas. We want to make sure that activities developed in the region are not actually diminishing the opportunities of nature to thrive. So it has to be compatible. I think now is Jonathan who is taking the floor. So, Jonathan, you may say whatever you want, but also there are a few questions for you, and you may reply to some of them. I have tried to reply to some of them, but please go ahead.
All right. No, thank you very much. And sorry that I could only make it a little bit later in the session, but no, it was really interesting to listen in on the group work and also to listen to all the different discussions that came out of the other groups that I wasn't a part of. And I think a lot of you picked up on what the requirements are for biosphere reserves to be successfully nominated. In fact, it's relatively straightforward. Some of the criteria are relatively straightforward, and they're contained in the nomination file. So I think to sort of understand the basics, the best thing for all of you to do is to go and take a look at the nomination file. And if you look at the nomination file, first of all, the first thing that needs to be done is that the nomination, the site fulfill the three functions of Biosphere Reserve. So conservation, the development, and logistic support. So that's the first page you need to fill in. And if you don't go through that, then you can't obviously get to the next stage. And I guess the next stage of analysis is to go through and see if the nominated site fulfills the 7 criteria for the designation of biosphere reserves. And a lot of the criteria that you picked up on either by actually having read the nomination form or just because these are things that they really obviously make a lot of sense to become a biosphere reserve. So the first criteria is related to the fact that the site encompasses a mosaic of ecological systems. The second, and this was picked up upon by a lot of you, that the site be of significance for biological diversity conservation. The third, which is kind of touched upon, but maybe not as specifically, relates to the fact that the sites provide demonstration sites for approaches to sustainable development on a regional scale. Then there's another criteria which is related to the actual size of the biosphere reserve and the fact that it has to be able to serve the 3 functions of biosphere reserve that I just mentioned. Through the appropriate zonation, so the core zone, the 3 different zones, the buffer zone and the transition zone. And then another point which Michael picked up on and which a couple of you talked about is the idea of governance and or what they call the organizational arrangements. So how different local authorities, local communities, the private interests, how they can all come together to make sure that the functions that the biosphere reserve will be able to carry out the functions of a biosphere reserve. And then again, part of that is you'll need to be able to describe how the different arrangements are put in place. So this was what was mentioned by some of you and also by Michael, the fact that, I mean, first of all, you have to be able to demonstrate that these arrangements are put in place and are sustainable. And then once the biosphere reserve has been established, you're going to have to, be able to have these mechanisms in place over time. And then that's the final criteria, is that are there mechanisms for the implementation of the biosphere reserve? So if, for example, is there a management plan in place, or is there a plan to have a management plan in place? Are there programs for research, etc.? So that's I'm happy to see that a lot of these points were picked up from the discussion, but it's really key, I think, first for anybody to understand also what how biosphere reserves function, is to look at the nominating file, because there you get these key, the functions and the criteria, and from there there, you know, the rest kind of flows, because there's some points that were made also, the fact that there needs to be, you know, political will and this, I mean, those are things that aren't written in there. They are between the lines, they're in at the end, but those are obviously things that are very important. The willingness, the ability to get all the different stakeholders involved and to be able to sustain that through time, because one thing is to go through the nomination procedure, and then the other part is to actually function as a biosphere reserve, and the two of them are difficult to do. And but now, because of the fact that over time these well, the functions and the criteria have been the same for a while, but the nominating procedure has evolved over time, and the review procedure has evolved over time. So now it's a little bit, by going through the nomination procedure and by going through the review procedure, you're really sort of thinking through how biosphere reserves should function, and by filling out these rams of paperwork, as you said, you're actually, you know, showing that you're able to function as a biosphere reserve, and showing that you're able to fulfill all the different functions and criteria to be nominated as a biosphere reserve. But I think I'll stop there, and thank you very much. It was great to listen to everybody, and great to be able to exchange with you.
We can't hear you.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Jonathan. Perhaps there are a few questions that I didn't answer. One or two addressed to you.
Okay.
For example, I mean, there was one on the if there are any project-based initiatives where we can engage as volunteers among organizations, teams, committees to promote biosphere reserves protection. This was one question to you. I mentioned the youth, the forum, and this kind of let's say centrally coordinated activities of volunteers, because what I said is mostly that this is in the hands of the national committees, commissions, or rather on each biosphere reserve. But perhaps there are other things that I'm not aware of.
No, sure. I mean, I think most of us that are involved in the with the MAB Secretary and with Biosphere Reserves are doing this on a voluntary basis, to tell you the truth. I mean, we're all sort of involved either through, and I could say broadly, I mean, there are a variety of ways. So you spoke about youth, but there's within the broader network of Biosphere Reserves, there's a number of thematic networks as well, through which people coordinate and work on, you know, for example, the network of island and coastal zone biosphere reserves, the network of, there's a new network of mountain biosphere reserves that's going to be created. So there are types of networks like that where people can exchange, and they're not necessarily talking about the managers of biosphere reserves, but people, for example, the scientists working within biosphere reserves have networks to work on specific issues and specific themes. And then obviously there's also the regional networks which exist, so people can work together. And there we're talking about the MAB committees, but also the biosphere reserve managers that get together, and other stakeholders that get together, in the context, for example, of Euromab, which is hopefully going to happen again this year in Austria. And so there's, because of the way that the MAB is structured, and because it's very much on a voluntary basis, and it functions on the basis of networks, all these different networks, both within biosphere reserves, within countries, and within regions, and at the global level. There really are lots of different ways that these different networks of people are getting together and working together. And youth is obviously a great example, and something that's very important, and which has been done at the global level, also at the national level. There are quite a few countries that have national youth MAB groups, and also at the regional level. They've been regional in addition to the global youth meetings. We've had meetings at the regional level in different regions to bring youth together at that level. So lots of different ways for people to come together and work together. Lots of different networks that can be taken advantage of.
There is also, since you mentioned the islands, I mean, there are two questions about if it is a priority, the Mediterranean island regions, and another one about climate change, if there are any particular actually emphasis or ongoing projects for climate change as well in biosphere reserves.
So yes to both questions. For the first, as you know, Michael, we've spoken about this before.
Yeah.
I want to try to put together a network of biosphere reserves in the Mediterranean, specifically those that are either in the Mediterranean, so island biosphere reserves or coastal biosphere reserves within the Mediterranean, and that's something that I'd like to put together along with the MAB committees in the region in the coming year or so. So it's very much a priority. And with regard to climate change, yes, it's a key aspect, and biosphere reserves have been are a key aspect, a key tool for UNESCO to, I mean, broadly to implement the SDGs, but specifically the one related to climate changes and also the Paris Agreement, and a lot of the projects that we're putting together, and some of which we've worked on together, are related to how biosphere reserves, can act as sites for adaptation, both mitigation and adaptation, but specifically for adaptation to climate change. And so projects have been. We're working on some in the region in Europe, but it's also the case. I have colleagues working on similar projects in Africa, for example, or in Latin America or Asia. So yes, it's definitely a priority for UNESCO, and MAB sites and biosphere reserves are key tools for UNESCO to implement to work towards SDG 14 and the Paris Agreement.
Okay, so I think finally, I think well, on what you said, I can offer also the information of your efforts to have biosphere reserves joining consortia in order to address things using, let's say, resources of the European Union or from others in order to be involved in work on climate change and adaptation, particularly in the area of water. And this has for managers of biosphere reserves, this is always a good opportunity for synergies with academia and with other stakeholders. And for sure, I mean,
you're
Michael,
muted.
you just muted. You became muted all of a sudden.
Yeah, sorry. I said that one of the benefits being in a network like the global network of biosphere reserves is also sharing this kind of experiences, and this needs to be further developed. I think we have started, but this is one of the things we need to actually develop more. I don't know if there is any
I'm the timekeeper who alerts that we are just over 1.5 hours. We maybe take some exceptional comment, but if there is no such, I would like to make some announcements regarding the next week's content that will be focusing on communication and branding, as we said. Of course, the content of week 1 will be open. So even if you are late in following the coursework, you can do it now. So next week at the same time, we will have the opportunity to discuss with the same experts and even more, and discuss further on communication issues around the BRs. Already we have asked you in the chat to write an evaluation of this meeting in just one word. And I don't know, Professor, if we don't have any other really pressing questions, burning questions from participants, I would like to ask you to switch on your cameras, those of you that wish to.
I just want to say thank you, but also be better prepared next time. I mean, when we ask how much you have studied, I would like to see a better response. Okay, you have enough time. So thank you very much all. Jonathan, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Ciao.
Ciao.
See you next week.
Next
Bye-bye.
week. Bye.
See you next week. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
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 Next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.